In this video, we're going to pick up where we left off in part one, and we are going to continue installing the partial floor pan in this 1971 Camaro that you see behind me. Today we're focused on getting the panel fitted and trimmed and tack welded in place. Stay tuned. Alright guys, here's our replacement piece. Should be a pretty close fit. Alright guys, so the panel is sitting in here right now. Up here we have the beads lined up the way that they should be. So what I'm going to do now is go underneath the car and scribe along here where it meets up with this panel, and then that'll tell me what to cut off of this one. It's looking like about 1/4 inch. Alright guys, so what I'm going to do now is scribe along the transmission tunnel and then cut about 1/2 inch below that so that I can get a little bit better of fit. If you see here, it's up a little high, and I don't want to take any more off of here until we get this down a little bit. So you can either take some off of here or you can take it off the tunnel. I'm just going to take it off the tunnel. So I'm going to push this down as best I can. Alright guys, you can see my scribe line right there. So again, I'm going to cut, I think, about 1/4 inch below that. That's what we'll do. And then that'll make room for the new panel, at least get it close. Alright guys, so I'm running into an issue that most of you may not, but basically I can't get this to sit flat because my Speed Tech cross member for the trans is getting in the way. So these floor pans obviously sit a little lower. The issue is right here, it slopes down. And I had the same problem on this side. I don't know if you can see it, but that X is bumped up a little bit because I had to force it in there. Alright guys, so I'm going to go ahead and take this bracket off and drop this down a little bit until I get my floor pan in, and maybe another day what I'll do is I'll cut some pockets into these floor pans or do something different to make this work. But I don't want to be doing that until the floor pan is actually in place. So let's go ahead and remove this, and then we'll get the floor pan fitted better. So what I'm doing right now is getting this panel fit to where it's ready to weld, and then before welding this we'll take care of this panel back here. So what I'm doing right now is making sure that these line up to the lines on the transmission tunnel, and I'm also making sure that this panel doesn't come further than my mark down here. That'll give me a nice even gap between these two. And then what I'm doing, you can see my scribes here, is I'm getting this fit to the best that I can, and I'm scribing like lower and lower here, and then I'll make a cut and maybe leave like 1/8 of an inch or something like that. So the goal right now is to just get this to the point where it's ready to weld. We have a little bit to remove right in here, There's two ways you can do this. One is you can get these to where you want it, and you can just take a cut-off wheel and go through both panels, and that'll give you a nice even gap across them. And the other way is you can just keep grinding and trimming to fit. So I'm going to go ahead and get this fit. I'll probably use a combination of the two methods. You know, like right here, it might be easier just take the cut-off wheel and go. Over here, I don't know, with the way that the floor pan is kind of curved over and everything, I'm not sure, so we'll see. All right, so let's keep going. Alright guys, one of the other things I'm going to do here real quick is grind off this lip that's on the panel. I'm assuming that's from being pressed out. So it goes the whole way down. So I'm just going to grind it smooth. Alright guys, so I pounded this dent out that was here, and you can see it didn't go so well. Pretty much cracked apart, fell apart, so I know our replacement panel doesn't go up that far, so we'll probably have to do a little bit of extra work. But anyway, for now, we're going to go ahead and cut out this piece here and put in the replacement piece. So there's the replacement. This, if you remember, I welded on a piece of 7/8 inch here to make a flange, and one of the things that's pretty obvious over here is that this doesn't line up, so I'm going to cut this out. So we'll just cut down and over, and if we have to do any work in here, we'll just do that piecemeal. And then over here, we're going to, just so we don't have our welds overlapping, we're going to go ahead and cut this down and up a little bit just to notch it out so that when we put this piece in, that these things aren't overlapping welds. So I'm going to go ahead and scribe around here and make the cuts. Alright guys, so we got that cut off there, and over here we notched it just so both welds don't line up on top of each other. Makes it a little easier to grind them out and stuff. So we're going to go ahead and scribe around this panel and then cut and leave about 1/4 inch and then come back and fit. This was a pain to get off. I couldn't see the spot weld, so I thought I would just use the air hammer and kind of pry it off. However, it took a little while to get that out of there. It was on pretty good, so if you can, look for those spot welds, drill them out, and then make your cuts. It'll be a lot easier. Alright, so we got the majority of this piece of the floor pan cut out, so all we're going to do now is fine tune it and trim it up as needed, and then we're going to start welding this piece in. We're also going to clean this up a little bit and throw some probably rust encapsulator on top of it. Alright guys, so I got this fit pretty well. I'm not gonna lie, it was a pain in the butt. This panel doesn't fit too well around here, and it's just making it difficult to get it cut right. So over here you're gonna see how to weld some larger gaps shut. So what I've done here, you can see these black dots. This is where I'm going to punch holes to match the factory spot welds there. So we'll plug weld each one of those to the tabs that you see on the thicker piece of metal underneath. And I'm also going to punch some holes on the side where we're going to plug weld it to the inner rocker here. And as you can see, I also cleaned up this reinforcement bracket, and I'm going to go ahead and spray the majority of it with rust encapsulator. However, I'm going to spray these tabs with weld-through primer, and I'm also going to spray weld-through primer like up here in this area where I'm going to be welding right across that. So let's go ahead and get that done, and then we'll get this piece welded in. Again, I don't think it's going to be that great of a job. I mean, it'll look fine when it's done, but as far as fitting went, it didn't go so well. But that's okay, because I can show you how to fill some larger gaps when you're welding. And I'm still going to have to make a piece here at a later date, so I probably will not weld that corner right now. We'll see how it goes. Just because you can see here, like, there's still a big piece that's ripped out. It's kind of thin right here. I'm not sure what was going on in this corner. So we'll get the majority of this piece welded in, and again leave this corner probably unwelded. We'll do that at a later date. But this allows us to move forward, because once we have this welded in, we can go ahead and put this main section in here and get all of that done. So alright, let's get some weld-through primer on this stuff and some rust encapsulator, and then we'll be ready to weld. So I like to use this tool whenever punching holes. Comes with a number of different sizes, and this is called the number 5 junior hand punch. So it's by a company called Roper Whitney. I think I'm saying that right. You can set the depth on this thing to whatever you need. There's those. So we'll go ahead and put 2 holes in this so that we can plug weld it to the side of the rocker. So we'll go ahead and throw some weld-through primer on here and some weld-through primer on all these holes here. Alright guys, got our weld through primer on there. We have the edge where we need to weld all cleaned up, all the paint removed. We have weld through primer down here where we're going to be plug welding. We have our holes punched and we have weld through primer on the bottom of the pan. So we are ready to weld the front piece into place. Just a reminder, this thing doesn't fit that great, so welding is going to be a little tricky, but we'll get through it. And we may have to add a piece of metal here and there just to fill some gaps if they're too big. So, and just a reminder that we're going to replace this corner later, so we're not going to weld the whole way around in that area, but we will get over here and we'll get from here over. Alright guys, so we got this piece tacked in on the left side. Remember, on the right side I'm going to do a little more work in that corner, so I'm not going to weld probably too far past this here. And now what I have is the other piece of floor sitting in here, just to make sure that my lines all line up pretty well, and they do. And this piece fits just as it did whenever we had it. I mean, there's still a little trimming to do, but for the most part, it looks good. All right, so now that we know this floor pan still fits like it did, we're gonna go ahead and clamp these down and plug weld them. And once we get all that done, we'll be ready to fit this piece and start tacking it in and getting it in place. Alright guys, so if you can see over here, this corner, it just doesn't line up too good. The panel, the new floor pan, doesn't really line up too well with this. So I can make this work over here by pushing these together, that's not a big deal. But this back here isn't going to go together without some heavy hitting up here or heating this up and hitting it down in there. So what I'm going to do is just make a cut here straight up, and then that'll let me bend this one this way and bend this one this way, and then I can come back and fill this with a little slither of sheet metal. So yeah, let's get to it, make the cut. Alright guys, you can go ahead and see where I cut that, and you can see the gap that I have to fill now. That took care of my issue. And right here I cut through both pieces of steel to make a nice gap. I had some overlap left on the transmission tunnel. I just took the cutoff wheel and went right through both, and I clamped them down, and I'm going to go ahead and tack these in place. Alright guys, quick update. So we got the floor pan welded in right here where it meets the overlapping piece. and we got the welds dressed up, so now we're ready to fit the next panel. So now what I'm going to do is, this is pretty close along here. It's like 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to take my cutoff wheel and I'm just going to follow right along the side here and make a nice gap. And then once this side drops in, I can go ahead and sort of tack it up. And then what I can do is the same thing on the side on the transmission tunnel. I can take my cutoff wheel, just go right across and get anything that's extra. Alright guys, so I got 2 sheet metal screws in there right now to kind of pull that down. It was wasn't sitting nice. So at this point, this turned out good here. Fits nice now. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and punch some holes on the flange that gets welded to the rocker panel. Get some weld through primer on that. And then punch holes across the flange that overlaps and get some weld through primer on that as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and begin tacking this in, plug welding it, and once we get all that in, we can take the cutoff wheel right across the top here and trim up that excess there. Alright guys, we got everything in weld through primer. We are ready to weld. So we got the part that overlaps in weld through primer, and of course we got the section that butts up against the inner rocker panel also in weld through primer. So that piece is ready to go. I also notched out this overlap piece to get it to where it needs to be, so because I won't be able to, you know, these pieces here I can cut after the fact and they'll just fall down to the ground, but I didn't want to get something stuck in there or anything, so cut that piece out already. That should be good. Alright guys, quick look at where we're at. So we made a cut there so that we can get the stuff lined up properly. The curve was a little too much to match up with the existing floor. We got this piece tack welded in. And we're ready to make our plug welds across the overlap. We're gonna have to do a little bit of work in here because this isn't lining up. We have all this tack welded in place. It's coming along nice. Alright guys, that is it for this video. In the next video, we're going to weld in the panel completely and dress the welds and call this one done. So if you liked this video, hit that thumbs up button. If you like this content, please consider subscribing. And if you do subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get alerts whenever we post new videos. And as always, if you have any comments, go ahead and put them down below and I'll get back to you. We'll see you in the next one.